There's a lot more.
It's bigger than us. It's not a human decision. That's right. So I tell one of them was too strong. We're like, oh, I'm talking to Steve here. I'm like, because he does it now. Don't rock the boat. You got it as good as you can have it. You can't put it in.
All right, for you folks on Zoom, we got a couple more people trickling in and signing in. Peggy, since I saw you just logged in on Zoom, can you please just holler back at us and let me know if you can hear us okay?
Sounding good.
Yeah, yes, can hear you fine.
Great, thanks. We'll try to speak up in this room so it stays clear. If for some reason it doesn't, just do the raise your hand thing on Zoom and we'll try and be a little more clear. Cool. If you didn't sign in on your way in, like Judy's doing, thank you, Judy. Please do that on your way out, or feel free to get up and do it during the meeting. For those of you who don't know, my name is J.R. Logan. Among other things, I'm the coordinator of this group, which is called the Taos Valley Watershed Coalition. This group has existed since 2015 and has tried its best to coordinate a lot of forest restoration and watershed protection work, starting down in the Rio Grande del Rancho in the Pot Creek area, all the way north to San Cristobal where I live. If you don't have an agenda, there's one on the table there next to the IPS infected pinon samples. We're gonna try and breeze through this agenda as quick as possible. I promise to get you out of here by 3 o'clock. The agenda has quite a few things to cover, but if there's a burning question, a comment, an issue that isn't on the agenda, please bring it up either when there's a lull in the action or raise your hand now and say, I want to add this as a topic. Cool. Seeing none, I'm going to close that front door and have you guys introduce yourselves. And Jeanette, will you please start on this side and please speak up for the folks on Zoom.
Thank you, JR. I'm Jeanette Brush, Taos County Commissioner.
Gail Minton, Seque del Monte, Del Rio Chiquito, small farmer.
Hi, Darlene Vigil, Taos County Commissioner.
Ellen Ebersole, Perryville HOA.
Watershed Forestry Contractor at Taos Valley Safety Association.
Cristobal J, Wildfire Mitigation Specialist and General Contractor.
Brady Crossfire Fire, Escondido Firewatch.
Judy Torres with the Taos Valley Safety Association.
Peggy in the back.
Oh, Peggy Descoville, New Mexico Forestry Division.
Young Hands, Pot Creek Firewatch.
Hey, Gary.
Hi everyone, I'm Grace Powell. I run the forestry program at Taos Soil and Water Conservation. Derek Stewart, I'm with the Forestry Division and Silverado District.
Christopher Martinez, Wildland Captain at Taos County.
Greg Medina, the Facility Manager of the Taos County Facility, Pot Creek.
Hey, Greg.
Russ Driscoll, Rio Fernando Fire District in Taos County.
Thanks for coming, Russ.
Good afternoon, all. Ben Thomas with Rocky Mountain Youth Corps.
Hi everyone, I'm Chandler Callahan, also with Rocky Mountain Youth Corps. I'm Evelyn Settler with the Taos Force.
Vicente Fernandez, Mayordomo Cañón Minero Project, Mayordomo Sequía Madre del Sur, and TVA.
Moises Trujillo, Assistant Mayordomo for the Rio Fernando Minero Project.
Welcome, everyone. Nitty, since you're late, you got to introduce yourself standing up.
Alex Beetle with Taos Ski Valley, of course.
Thanks for coming. And then we'll go through quickly you folks who called in via Zoom. And Amanda, we'll start with you, please.
Hi, everybody. Amanda Knopf, Program Coordinator with the National Forest Foundation.
Thanks for coming. Jai, you're up.
Jai Cross, Farciante, and Arroyo Hondo, member of the Hondo Seco Volunteer Fire Department.
Thanks for coming, Jai. Peggy Nelson, please.
Peggy Nelson, Parciante, and
Oh, shoot, Peggy, I'm sorry. I
Did
meant
you
to
hear?
mute Jai and I muted you instead. Can you try that again? My
Yes, I
apologies.
think you muted me. That's fine. Peggy Nelson, I'm a Parciante in San Cristobal and reside here.
Thanks for coming, Peggy. Summer, you're up.
Hi, I'm Summer Wood. I'm a resident of San Cristobal and also a Parciante here.
Welcome. Henry Hammond Paul, please.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Henry Hammond Paul. I'm the village administrator for the village of Taos Ski Valley, and excited to be here. Real quick, JR, is there a way that there's video in the chamber rooms by any chance, or no?
You can walk in my face all meeting. I don't have an owl or
Gotcha.
anything like that. So
Cool.
yeah,
All good. Just
Yeah.
wondering. Thanks.
Thanks for asking. Kelly Jones, please.
Kelly Jones, New Mexico State University's Forestry Research Center in Mora.
Thank you for coming. And Harold, is that you, Taos Pueblo DNR? Can't hear you and I don't see a mic, so hopefully that's you guys. Thanks for calling in. Great. Well, we're going to hop right to it. Chris, who's still fresh on the job, I asked him, as Wildland captain for the county, to give us all an update on the fire season outlook. Obviously, with as dry as it was over the winter, we're looking at some pretty extreme conditions already. But Chris, if you don't mind standing up, I'll throw stuff on the screen as it's helpful for you. But maybe spend the next 15 minutes, 20 minutes letting us know what we can expect.
Awesome. So again, Christopher Martinez. I'll start off with just a quick rundown of today's fire weather conditions and throughout the week. So currently we are in a red flag warning today from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. What that means, we've got some high fire potential throughout our county. That goes for most of the week. We've had quite a bit of fires that have been popping off, type 5s, type 4s, that area range.
Explain what that means, like a type 5 or a type 4.
Type 5s are roughly smaller fires, things could be put out in a day. Type 5s.
Recording in progress.
Type 4s get on a little bit larger, so you start looking at it's going to take more resources, more time, more effort to clear out. And as early as mid of the year, you're starting to see these. So just having everybody be cautious about that. And with that, I will go into the predictive outlook period for March through June. So I'm just going to focus on the southwest area, which is our specific locations, but I'll just read right off the paper what we got going on. So starting with above normal is forecasted across eastern New Mexico in March, followed by normal potential area-wide in April. And then with that, above normal significant fire potential forecasted across portions of the southeast Arizona and southern New Mexico in May. That will expand to most higher elevations in June. I don't know if you can pull up a map of those showing that. I can kind of point that out. Precipitation in February was below normal across the region, mostly 30 to 50% of normal, with portions of eastern New Mexico and southwest Arizona receiving less than 10% of normal precipitation. Temperatures in February were above normal across most of the region, which continued the pattern from earlier this winter. The continuation of the long-term dryness and warmth is expected to result in expanding drought. So it's going to be dry. And if you look here, you have the maps. So for March, you can see we're not quite in the red yet, but a lot of the eastern part of the state is in the red. So it's inching its way in a little bit further and further to the next one. In April, we're looking a little bit better. We have some potential for some moisture, but not much. So moving on into May, we're starting to get a little drier in our southern area. So what that means for us is we could possibly be looking at more high fire danger, fire potential with that. Moving on into June, right in the day. So high fire potential going on in that area, and our whole area we're covered completely. So I'll move on a little bit more to the Climate Prediction Center, and protective service outlooks are for generally drier than normal conditions to continue, especially for March and April. May and June are likely to be near normal, but this is also the driest time of the year in the Southwest, which most areas typically receive very little precipitation. So yeah, we're looking at a dry season again. Does anybody have any questions on this?
I've got some questions. Can we talk about live fuel moistures for a second?
Yeah.
So one of the metrics that they use to determine that fire risk is live fuel moistures. And there's a few sites in the Sangre de Cristo. I think there's two, one down in the Pecos and one in Truchas. And it basically gives us an index or a measurement of how dry the fuels are out in the forest as an indicator of how volatile they're going to be. And Russ, I'm going to put you on the spot since you know way more about this stuff than I do. In people terms, describe what the ERC is and how that's reflected in a chart like this.
The energy release component is what the ERC is, and this is the available fuels and their capability of putting out the amount of heat. The potential for large fire growth is where ERC comes from, and the ERC is developed based on what we call our live fuel moisture, and they actually take branches and allow them to dry out to find out how wet they are when they're living versus how dry they are when they dry out. And that percentage gives them an idea of what the potential is for that live fuel to burn. Okay, we know that dead fuels burn, but that can be affected by just the humidity that day. The live fuels, when our ponderosa pine comes out of dormancy over the winter months, we need our spring snows. We need moisture on the ground for them to absorb that moisture up, pull that up into the needles. If the moisture's not there, then they are primed to burn almost immediately in the spring of the year. And that's sort of where we're at right now, is there's no moisture in the ground or very little moisture in the ground. So as they're coming out of their winter dormancy where they haven't been taking any moisture in, they need to be drawing it up. So the wet time of the year, that gets us through till our monsoons hit in June and July. Well, there's no moisture for our live fuels to pick up as they're coming out, as everything's budding out. They're taking all the moisture that's available right now. Well, they may die in the next month, 6 weeks, because there's no moisture to continue the growth. So the potential for our fire growth right now doesn't look good. The energy release component, we're right at 90% coming on. And once we reach 90% higher, that becomes critical. That's when we really get serious about our fires can have the potential to go large immediately. So, answer the question good enough?
Sure did. Gary, go ahead.
So related to that, we have a homestead that's manageable to do. So does it make a difference to irrigate, to sprinkle the trees immediately around our house? Is that something we can make a difference in that immediate area?
If you have the water available, do it. Okay, I hate to say yay or nay. Any tree that's got moisture in it, when a wildfire hits, it's going to burn that moisture off before it becomes flammable. So the more moisture you get, ponderosa pine is what we base a lot of it on here for us. When in the springtime of the year, when we get into May on a nice wet year, there'll be 180% moisture. So they'll have 80% more moisture in them than what they normally have, because they've drawn up all that spring moisture. Well, right now, we're probably not even hitting, I don't know if there's anything current up there or not. I know they just pulled fuel samples the other day, but I haven't seen those readings yet. We're probably less than 100% on that. I know we're less than 100%. It's probably 35 or 40%. So if you can keep your trees alive and you've got the water to do it, do it. It helps.
Have you spoken with the Forest Service as to what they're thinking?
In terms of closures?
Yeah.
So you may have noticed that there's no representation from the Carson today. It's not because I pissed them off. I don't think. The fire guys are already on fire assignments elsewhere in the country. I know there's a couple engines out east. And the timber guys are busy doing work now because of that exact reason. There is the threat of seeing the forest close earlier maybe than even normal in a dry year. I don't have any for sure this is when it's going to happen, but unless the weather changes significantly in the next month, I am already hearing from the district rangers that they're planning on opening the roads April 1st rather than April 15th, like they usually do, which is a good indication that they're planning to close the forest possibly as soon as May. But again, that's totally speculative, and I know those conditions change for the guys on the forest themselves. It's not like they know and they're just not telling us. They're just keeping an eye on things and trying to balance use of the forest access with maintaining public safety and preventing a fire from starting.
Now, has the county put in place a no burn restriction already?
Yeah, so currently today we are in a no burn ban at the moment. It hasn't been made official yet, but possibly looking on Monday on the 30th, we may be going into stage 1 fire restrictions, which will suspend all burn permits in the county. More information on that will come out a little bit later, but it's still in that decision kind of eye watch process.
We had a discussion about the burn ban 2 days ago. There's a science that we use. There's some ERC, all this type of stuff. We use a fire analysis report that we do on a weekly basis. And anytime we hit a threshold, there's what we go into as county fire districts, we go into a high risk response. So more agencies automatically respond. We're not quite there yet. As far as burn restrictions, we're a couple of points away. If we hit the ERC the next couple of days, then there's a couple of points there. So we're right on that edge. The discussion is happening already. Let's put it that way.
Peggy.
I have a couple questions. First off, it comes on burn restrictions, so this is just a personal question. It's still getting cold at night. If we have fires in our fire places with those, does that cause any risk at all?
Yeah, so to warm your homes and such a thing, yeah, no, for sure, keep yourselves warm. But there are some measures you could take, just making sure your chimneys are swept clean. Make sure you have your screens in place on the top, so you're not spitting out embers and stuff that could cause house fires and/or even brush fires around your place too. So just that's kind of the thing you want to watch out for. But yeah, as far as warming your homes, yeah, you definitely keep that going.
And then, are we expecting any more red flag days this weekend?
I would imagine so. It's looking like it's going to be a lot of warm weather. So it just depends on day to day on how it's going to look and how it's going to go. But for prediction wise, I would expect it.
Is it too early to predict any monsoon activity?
There are some predictions on monsoons a little bit. That's not my exact area of expertise at the moment, but I know they're looking at El Niño, possibly producing a little bit of some moisture. I don't know the full 100% on that, so I can't give a good one. I don't know if anybody else has.
Last that I checked on it, they were saying that the monsoons might come late, but they'll be stronger than normal. But they're talking mid-July now. It's the 1st of July. But we'll actually, NOAA Weather Service we should have a long-term fire outlook in the next couple of weeks. And they're normally pretty close within a few days.
Chris or Russ, I don't know which of you prefer to do it. Can you describe a little bit of the change the county's made when it comes to implementing those burn restrictions? Because my understanding it's gradated now, where it used to just be on or off switch. Now it comes in phases similar to the stage 1, stage 2 restrictions that the National Forest does.
You want to miss? You want me to do it? I'll let you go with that one. So A couple of years ago, we got commissioned to basically give the authority to our county fire chief and fire marshal to make and break rather than go before the commission meeting and this type of thing to enact the burn ban. The other thing that happened was the burn ban, we basically had a full on or full off. Now we've gone to stage 1 through 3. Stage 1 is what we're discussing right now, and basically that'll take and suspend all outdoor burning and any new burn permits until we go out of stage 1 restrictions. You're still allowed to have your barbecue grills and outside type stuff. As long as you've got a switch on and off, you can turn it on and off. Does not preclude religious or ceremonial fires, okay, under that deal. Campfires, here again, we get sticky because we're talking federal versus this is private property only that we're discussing. Campfires are allowed under stage 1 restrictions. We're just taking basically the agricultural type burns away, okay? When you move to stage 2, then it grades up. Stage 3 is basically where we're saying no sleeps at all, period. That's where your grinders and welding and all that kind of stuff gets shut down.
Yeah. Judy, I don't know if you can speak to this or not, but you know, burning the ditches as part of the Olympia has been a thing around here for a long time. Do you hear any people talking about we're going to burn this year, even though it's dry? Or would there be acequias that you know of that'd be affected by like a stage 1 restriction on ditch burning? They don't burn anymore. That's not right, Mark?
That's spot on. A lot more weed eaters, brush cutters out there now. Because back when we did it regularly, that fire almost always got away. What's in spring, right? It's spring. It's dry. It's windy.
Yeah.
Right?
So you wouldn't think so.
Yeah, that's right. Ben?
I was just curious how the county is posting that information to the public outside just us.
Once we go into full restrictions, or any restriction at all, then you're going to hear it and see it in the newspaper and radio this time. Normal public service announcements that we put out. Like I say, discussion, we literally had this discussion 2 days ago and decided we're a little bit early. We went to the burn restrictions or burn ban because of the wind event today, and pretty much the wind event's going to stay steady through Monday. We've got gusty winds coming in and this type of thing, so I don't expect that to come out until middle of next week. If we get moisture with it, then that will be it.
And I made the assumption that it will be posted on the website.
Mary?
Yeah, as long as the local departments send it to city forestry, it also gives us the fire info under the restrictions page. We of course depend on the local departments who are share that information.
Yep. Chris, I know you've been looking at these charts for decades. I'm just curious what you're seeing when you look at that ERC chart.
Serious. That's some big spikes there.
Yeah.
Am I reading it correct that we're record-breaking ERCs currently, and the early April moisture will just get us to the max level?
For the time of year, yes.
Yeah, so I put this up cryptically and intentionally didn't explain it, just so you could look at it. So the current is this blue line. That's this year. This puts us in March. The average is this gray line down here. I don't know over what time span that average is. Maybe one of you guys does. And then the previous max was this red line. So yeah, maybe what you're saying is, you look at this day, so yesterday, 25th of March, average was down here. The highest it was up here prior to this year, and this year we're up here, like right teetering on what they call the 97th percentile, which just means it's sketchy for sure. So by this metric, the fields are very dry.
Yeah, I think it really is important, and it was mentioned a little bit earlier with the stress. A lot of the parameters that we look at to give us an indication of expected fire behavior and expected ways that fire will behave are based on our past knowledge. And so when we have an anomaly like this where the trees are not out of dormancy yet, it's more serious than what this graph is showing. We are working with scientists and folks in Los Alamos to develop these new parameters to try to help us get a feel for this, but we are in some conditions now that we really don't have the language to describe because the condition of the plants normally don't have to deal with this kind of a drought or lack of moisture. So it's worse than what you see up there.
Oh, jeez. No, you're totally right. It does not say what year it was. We don't know what year it was.
On the max, it is the max for all years of life. So, every point up there can be different.
That's right. Whatever the highest day was, highest level was for that particular date in whatever year. No, it does have.
The times of bottom.
Most of the maxes have hit in the last 20 years.
2018 was bad.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's interesting to watch this chart. I look at it at least once a day to consider that we had such a dry year last year and got bailed out. I mean, you can see it. There was, I think it was somewhere in here where we were creeping up, and this was the previous high last year. It doesn't show it like that, Grace, but we had that sort of late spring event and got that bump of moisture, and so the fuels recovered. We saw fuel moistures increase, and this chart decrease because of that late spring moisture, and it kind of bailed us out of what otherwise would have been a bad year. We're not getting bailed out this year, at least not so far. And so where we saw that. That's right. Yeah, talk a little bit about that, especially like how that relates to what's happening out on the plains and with the fires that we're seeing out there.
Yeah, no, for sure. With the fuels and stuff, it's nice when we get a big amount of moisture coming in, helps these grow. But then when we hit that drought again, things start to die off, they're drier, and they light up a lot easier. So that's kind of what we're looking at here. As a result of that, is what started helped a lot of these fires that we've had this past month to grow. It's just that the fact that it grew, dried up, and now it has no moisture to keep it going. So
we didn't have the heavy snows this winter to lay the grasses down, so there's still aerial fuels, which allows it to travel very, very quickly.
So for the eastern plains, just some numbers that they've been throwing out is that we typically see 300 to 600 pounds per acre of the grasses out there, and there's currently about 1,500 to 4,000. So that's the difference in the grass from our normal year to all the rest of the year last year with all the wet moisture that we had. So, and that's all sitting there. That hasn't been great. So in places where there's been a lot of grazing, we're probably okay, but places where there hasn't been much grazing, we have fields that can carry, they're considered, our light 1 hour fields, and they can carry the fire through the forest.
So obviously the moral of the story of this agenda topic is please be careful. Please stress caution with your neighbors in your neighborhoods, with your ditches, with whoever will listen to you, just because we're in a very dry and very volatile season, especially in spring on any windy day. It's especially sketchy. Last year, because we were under similar circumstances a little bit earlier in the year, the county, Carson Co-op, and a couple of other entities did a series of talks at UNM Taos downtown at the town hall. And I'm happy to send out again those same videos. Each session was like an hour and a half. They covered a variety of topics. The one that was, I think, most attended and we got the most feedback on was people concerned about what they can do to protect their homes and do structure protection. And thankfully, there's tons of resources out there. New Mexico State Forestry is an excellent resource for that. You just go find their website. I can send that information out again. I do it every year around this time of year. And then if you watch that quick webinar or want to share it with anybody, it's got tons of easy to digest tips that don't involve having to spend 10 grand to hire somebody like Mark to cut all the trees down your house, though you can do that if you want. There's some pretty basic landscaping and maintenance that can be done in a weekend to improve the chances of your house surviving a fire. So, any other questions or comments on that topic before we move on?
And so just with that, also just keep on your radar. If you guys don't know anybody that needs or wants a home visit from the county, we will go out and take a look at your place and see what can be done to help prevent fire, improve, and such in those matters. So just keep that on your radar.
Did you have something? Oh, sorry, Henry, I didn't see your hand up. You have a comment?
Henry Hammond Paul, Village of Taos Ski Valley. I was just wondering if there was something being shown in the room because we couldn't see it online, but that was all. Thanks.
There's lots going on in here, Henry. Sorry, dude.
JR?
Yes.
Just a quick question. In regards to bringing awareness to the community, do you know if there will be some articles coming out just to, I mean, you have to remind people all the time, right, that this is the situation?
Right.
I'm just wondering, will you be putting out?
So I get a monthly column. I think if my turn comes around and we're still in the situation we are now, I'll write something to that effect. Emily's in the room.
Oh, sorry.
So that I expect will be part of her article. The Taos News has done a great job of covering this issue, and they've been really provided some clear and accurate information in the past. So I hope they do the same. And last year myself and others got invited on radio shows and stuff like that. So we're always shopping that around. Yeah, Grace.
The Water Conservation District is also available to come to any areas by a lot of folks in the room to come to any of your meetings. I'm going to host meetings that are often to do education for the communities. So if you don't want to reach out to me about that, I'm happy to schedule. And then we're also looking into doing public events. So
thank you.
Great.
And Judy.
Judy.
I know, like, Carson has that mass text message that goes out anytime there's anything, having to do with their power rights. Will they do that for Shelby County before this state one?
Well, there is, you have to register in order to get the messages, and that's the downside, right? If you're not registered, you're not gonna get all that information.
But if Carson
is able to help us.
Yeah.
And we
It
can.
would get a lot.
Yeah, more than we would, yeah, right. So we can certainly talk to that. We're working together.
Great. Anything else? Cool. Thank you, Chris. All right, so this time of year, I always like to zoom around the map. Let's make sure the folks online can see this. For you folks on Zoom who are getting a terrible meeting experience, let this be a lesson to you to don't call into my Zoom meetings. Oh, that's adorable. All right, so
Lesson learned.
For members of this coalition, young and old, new and weathered, the blue boundary here is the boundary of what we call the Taos Valley Watershed Coalition. So This was drawn back when Chris and Mark and others sort of founded this thing and decided this is the area we want to focus on. We're going to zoom around today to several places that way back those folks identified as priorities to get done. And I'm always, when we do these updates, happy to report that tons of progress and tons of work is being made. And so we're just going to go kind of to those hot spots and discuss what's been done, what's happening now, and maybe what's on the books for the near future. We're going to start actually in the south, in the McGaffey Ridge area, and because the Carson National Forest folks aren't here, I might ask Peggy, unless she split. Can you speak to those projects happening up there, please, Mary?
So, the state is using some of our state funds to fund this work on the Forest Service, and the total area up there is a little under 1,500 acres, and I think we've got about 440 of them done so far. They're in about 11 units. There's 2 units that we hope to get done this winter because of their proximity to wetlands. We wanted frozen ground. We didn't get that, so we're going to hold off on doing those and hope that next winter gives us the right conditions to have equipment going through there. I'm really proud of the contractor today, that's Forest Fitness, and they have shut down because of the red flag day. Last week I wasn't so proud because we had a wildfire in the McGaffey area, in an area where the hot saw had been operating the day before. But very proud because the crew out there saw the smoke and went over and started putting it out. So fire crews came in and they had the equipment on scene to be able to do that. So it's a really good indication that we have to be very, very careful. So as we're doing all this work in the woods, when we reach these kind of conditions, it's like, yeah, we should have done that 10 years ago, 5 years ago, last year, but not today. So it's really nice to have our contractors recognizing when conditions get really bad. And today is an extreme fire danger day in addition to do it.
Where is that area specifically that you're working on?
So outside, like on the road towards Fiasco, on this side of the hill, and I believe it goes on both sides of the road. We've been working mostly on the west side of the road.
Yeah, Jerry, those units are from your house. You go up to that Forestry, I never remember the name.
476.
That's the one. Yeah. And into this area, there's a big mark. It's what they call a cut deck. So pretty heavy duty equipment. They're in there cutting trees, skidding them, moving them, and then creating decks, big piles of wood out there, which presumably the Forest Service will sell once those decks are done. Is that the plan, Mary?
Right, yeah, so the Forest Service owns the wood, so they're responsible for selling the deck. We're only paying for the treatment to be done for the they call it cut skid deck because part of what we pay for is to get the wood in the pile.
Yep.
So that's at least somewhat profitable for the operators to be out of there. Unfortunately, there's not enough value in a standing tree to pay for it to go to the woods. So we're covering part of that. Getting into the deck isn't enough of the value that we can afford to get into the sawmill.
And if the Carson guys were here who laid this out, Gary, they would tell you that that project area off of that road and in that area accomplishes 2 things at once. It helps to restore that stand. That's near and in that area where we've seen all of the tussock moth blown up. The tussock moth is really indicative of those stress trees, those stands that just have too many trees in them, like we've talked about. So they're addressing some of those forest health concerns. It also happens to be in one of those areas where we know the prevailing winds and the amount of rules line up really well, come right down into your neck of the woods. So it builds off the work that SMU did back in the day with County and Chris, and some of that work that happened. I think the Youth Corps even did some of that project work behind SMU maybe 10 or 15 years ago And so it's continuing some of that fuels treatment up towards the top of that McGaffey Ridge area. That's a big bite. How many acres did you say that was, Mary, in total you guys got funded?
So the area that the Forest Service wants to treat is about 1,500. We did not fund the entire amount of this go around, but we will get it funded. So it's just adding it to, and we're trading out those 2 units that we don't think we can get to now for some other units with the money we have. We're committed to help the Forest Service on it and get it done.
Yeah, I think this is the right time to give you and Forestry Division a pat on the back, because at about the same time that the federal government was imploding and funding completely dried up, the state really stepped up with its own funds and is backstopping a lot of this project work, including a lot of the stuff we'll talk about here in a second that's being funded through the county and other entities. So thank you, Mary. Please extend our thanks to Laura. And yeah, the state legislature has recognized that this is a big problem, and that we can't wait on the feds to fund it, regardless of whether it's private land or tribal land or federal land. And so I'm just thrilled and very excited about how much funding through the state has come into that blue line area to get work done that's been on the books for a long time. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. How are you, what's the treatment on the slash? You cut skid deck on the timber, lots of flammable branches.
Yeah,
The mastication or piled?
now Peggy's out there almost every day. I've got a broken leg and haven't been to the room 3 or 4 months. So I believe there are some areas that they're masticating, but I don't think they're masticating everywhere. But I know we had a lot of conversations around what the Forest Service wanted and trying to get it the way they wanted it. I think we were pushing for a lot of scattered, and they were pushing for mastications areas, but some areas you can't. So it's really not the same everywhere. I think you would have to speak where what is happening.
You know, when I was out there, it looked like a mix of mastication and then also using the slash in the tracks that they're doing, like running up.
We have had super success with the heavy equipment projects with the wood punching kind of that slash into the road. And it's really an effective erosion control effort. And we've done it for the last couple of years with several sites, and it's like no runoff coming off skid rows and stuff like that.
Is that a catchy name, like integration or something? Like integration. If you don't have a catchy name yet, that'll work.
I think you just gave it.
Copyright.
Cool. Thank you, Mary. At the next meeting, I'll make sure the Forest Service is here to give us an update on that project progress, if there is any. If you guys are shut out for dryness or whatever, then it's what it is. And also to give us a look ahead. I know they've got units planned all through that McGaffey treatment area over the next 5 years. And my understanding is that between the state and then new pots of federal money that is coming through, that there should be work happening fairly soon. So there's that red line, that's that McGaffey area. Moving on, we'll go up to Pueblo Ridge. So you'll recall this is the area up Taos Canyon on the north side of Highway 64. Purple line there, can you guys see that? Great. So this ties into the work that was done right up around the pass towards Angel Fire. That's called Lahada. So they had been cutting and doing prescribed burning in there the last couple of years. The last burn was in 2024. And then moving into Pueblo Ridge, Pueblo received funding to do work across their boundary, right kind of in this area in the northeast corner of that unit. And then the county has funds to do work in this little foot down across the street from Valle Escondido. The county also did a 50-acre fuel break right here. This is in Cañon, right against the Pueblo boundary. They did an application in there with Volkes and Damperoni. Now we're hiring, this is the county. The county's hiring a crew to continue that fuel break going up that country. It's pretty steep and nasty in there. 50 to 60% slopes, so the prescription describes it as. Lastly, the county also has funding to do what they're calling fire line. So that's prepping to do a prescribed fire. And that'll be in this area, the Solomon Springs area. Really just, if you know where like Citrullo or the Romero's have their base up that canyon with that Baca Canyon, it's just immediately to the east of there. Does that sound all right, Russ? Accurate? Yeah. Grace?
Talk about private funding in this area as well.
Yeah.
If Amanda's still on, I'm curious to hear an update with the NFF and how many landowners are participating and what acreage is happening.
Amanda, I was gonna do private land updates later. I don't know why I did it that way. So why don't we just jump into, if you're still on and can hear us, National Forest Foundation project work in that same Taos Canyon area?
Yeah, I can give an update. Yeah, so the National Forest Foundation, we have funding for private lands work throughout the Enchanted Circle. So we started late last fall what we're calling the Enchanted Circle Resilience Program, and it is to help private forest landowners throughout the landscape. And how this program is working is that we are working in like a single focus area at a time. So right now, if you see the map that JR has up, we're basically working along Highway 64 from Shady Brook into by Escondido and down into Tienditas. So we're looking for landowners who have 10 or more forested acres to work with. And like Grace mentioned, we technically started last fall, but I call it like a very soft, quiet launch because we did a very small outreach campaign to landowners in that area. So right now we're working with 3 landowners, but in late April, we're going to do a more robust outreach campaign. And I feel like that's really the kind of full launch of the program. And so how the program works is if landowners are interested and eligible and have those 10 forested acres, they'll be linked up with a local technical assistance provider who will do a site visit and can develop a forest management plan at no cost to the landowner. And then if they decide to treat, NFF can do this on their behalf. It is a cost share program. So in some cases, the landowners may be required to pay for a portion of the work, but there are a handful of ways for folks to receive up to 100% of the cost being covered. So I would say kind of technically we started, but we're really starting in April. So landowners in this area, be on the lookout for outreach coming to you via mailed items, online items, yard signs. I do have a request. I'd love to put up yard signs for folks who live in that area. So if you live in that area or know of somebody who lives in that area who would put up program information, please reach out because I can get you hooked up with a yard sign. And then otherwise, if you or someone you know are interested in the program, people can reach out to me directly and I can put that information in the chat for JR to share out.
Yeah, please do that because there's a couple folks in the room who you should connect with if you're not already, Amanda. One's
Okay.
Grady, who's with the Escondido Neighborhood Association. And then Russ Driscoll, who's with the volunteer fire department in that area. They would be great resources to get that message out for you.
Yes, that would be great. I will drop that information in for you.
Any questions for Amanda while we've got her off mute?
Yeah, Amanda, this is Ben Thomas. Who's doing the work once you vet the landowner?
I'm missed part of that, but you asked who's doing the work. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. We're working with the Cimarron Watershed Alliance to be our technical assistance providers. So they're the ones going out, meeting with the landowners, writing forest management plans. And then we will have to go through a procurement process for the folks who are actually doing the operations. So we don't know yet. Our preference is always to work with somebody local. But depending on the size of the project, we either have to go through a request for proposals or bids, like a competitive process to choose whoever ends up being the operator. So unknown, but we know there's a lot of great folks locally who might be able to do that work.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Amanda. Please keep us posted. And
Yes.
I'm pulling up your information in the chat. Boy, that's little. I'll send it out to everybody, especially you, Grady and Russ.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. So, quick backstory. When National Forest Foundation got word that it was awarded these funds, they came to the CWPP core team, that's kind of the agencies that all have a hand in the work across the county, and asked us, for the whole county, where do you think this money would be most well spent? And our answer was in that Taos Canyon area was the top priority. And it's partly because it's the top priority of this coalition and has been since its inception. But also in the 10 years since we came up with the plan for this group, we've gotten a lot of great data from the state. The feds have really updated their data and made that publicly available. And without question, Taos Canyon and the Rio Ferrando watershed it's the most at-risk non-tribal watershed in Taos County for life, property, water, and just watershed and the function of that forest, the asbestos forest. It's rust. It used to be once upon a time. The other reason Taos Canyon is a prime area for activity, especially on the private lands, is because if the purple is Pueblo Ridge, and remember, these are all areas that the Forest Service has done its NEPA, which opens the door to work being able to be accomplished. Pueblo Ridge was signed a couple of years ago. That was the purple here, really as a way to deal with these south-facing slopes and to protect Taos Pueblo, which is immediately to the north, the Blue Lake Wilderness. The Carson has since completed its NEPA for this gigantic green area, which they call the Taos Canyon NEPA, and that ties all of those pieces together. It's the big puzzle piece that was missing between Pueblo Ridge and McGaffey. So it gives all of us, especially the Forest Service, license to accomplish work in this area of Taos County where we have access, we have obvious risk, and there's the kind of forest that we can make really good work in. So all of those things are aligning for us, and we're trying to accomplish as much of that work as possible. That one's well over 100,000 acres in there, maybe close to 100,000 acres. It's a big chunk. Cool. That's McGaffey. It's Pueblo Ridge. Let's go to Kiowa-San Cristobal. So this was the first project area that the Taos Valley Watershed Coalition started working after its inception. All right, so inside of that red line, you might remember, so if this is the village of San Cristobal right here, the work that's happened really in the last 7 to 8 years has been on the south side of the valley. And again, it's to address that wildfire risk that this coalition identified 10 years ago and is trying to mitigate. I want, if I can find it. Well, you'll have to travel. There it is. This sucker. You guys might remember the crayon colors. Chris is not dead. This was modeling that was done shortly after this group was formed, and the idea was to identify topography, prevailing winds, fuels types, fuel loading, and get a best estimate of if we have a random fire start anywhere really across the whole landscape here, what's the most likely, where are the most likely areas to burn, where are the most likely paths that they follow. And so all those treatments that have occurred really south of my cursor inside of this red line have been intended to protect my valley and this upper watershed of the San Cristobal Creek, the Llama Creek, and even the Rio Hondo from fire blowing through the PJ up into the higher country, just like the Hondo fire did 30 years ago. You might have noticed if you drifted north towards Cuesta that the prescribed fire that they did last October or then later in the winter scorched a lot of trees. And it has upset a lot of people in my neighborhood. It has caught the attention of a lot of people passing by. I know even some people in this room and definitely on the Zoom call aren't happy about it. So we're going to go out into the field on April 18th, and we're going to look at that prescribed fire unit, and we're going to talk about what that area looks like, what the areas that were treated previously inside of this red area look like, and see if there's any lessons that all of us can learn, not just about how that prescribed fire went, but maybe what the future that area is going to look like, and try and find some common ground around like what the intent was, what they accomplished, and then as they move north, we, Carson, we, this coalition, you know, how we might work in PJ in a way to allay some of those concerns. So April 18th, for those of you on the call in San Cristobal, I know that's pitch day part 2, but I'm just running out of date options. So we're going to start at noon with enchiladas that Winnie Medina is going to cook. Anybody is invited to come along to that, and then we'll go out into the woods and look at some stuff. As far as updates go in this area, the Carson is laying out units in the farthest north. So this would be like Garapata Canyon up closer to Llama. And they're going to do thinning work in the ponderosa pine stringers, which you'll find in the bottom of those canyons as you're kind of rolling up and over those hills on your way to Cuesta. That work, as far as I know, is projected to start as soon as this summer, but we'll see, and I'll give updates for sure at that April 18th meeting. Let those guys speak to how that's going to look. And I'd also mention that the county had funding through this appropriation from the Legislature CARES Act grant, the corridor, where we've done a number of projects in this area, including about 90 acres of pinon juniper mastication on these properties here. And so this is north of the National Forest boundary. Bear with me. There we go. So all the green is National Forest lands. That's where the work's been happening. The mastication that we just recently finished ties this work on the green into some of these open fields at the Hawk Ranch or the former Hawk Ranch by treating some of that PJ. If we have time, I'd like to go check that out on April 18th. But for my money, mastication in that woodland is really good bang for your buck. It's really effective both in terms of cost and in terms of time. The major downside is you chew up a lot of firewood that otherwise would end up in people's wood stoves. So we've got to balance that demand and that need as well. Something worth considering as we keep moving forward. Any questions about San Cristobal? I was trying to let you off the hook, but yeah, go ahead, Mary.
We have had intentions of doing the Forest Service land. We worked with JR to get all of the property on the H4 stuff, and that went pretty smooth and looks really good. And then for the property that is around the H4s on the Forest Service, we've been promising the Forest Service for years that we're going to get in there and get something done. And it has been a commodity of bureaucracy. Sometimes it's we're so close to having to work with. So we're hoping it will still be on the right path and out here. And she gave a notice, and she's got 2 weeks to help us. But we got our fingers crossed that Lulu will come out of the hopper, and we have noticed her proceed one time and then back up. We are getting close, hoping it will happen, and it does happen this summer. I'm not going to be here.
What do you call it?
Something else that nobody knows.
Well, thank you for that update, Mary, and for being honest about it. So, the work Mary's referring to on the D.H. Lawrence Ranch is this section here, that as part of the same funding package that we pitched to the state, and the state agreed to, Taos County got about $500,000 to do work on the D.H. Lawrence Ranch. And yeah, I think it looks great, especially 2 years on now. The ranch itself looks pretty great. I think it could use another entry at some point, but we don't need to talk about that right now. The cluster of bureaucracy that Mary's talking about is all this stuff to the south, where the Forest Service and the state have been trying to figure it out. It's just kind of been hanging out there. Anyways, please let us know if you can sneak it through before you hire another attorney, or what we can do to help.
Yeah, I really like to see it, but you know, or like get to the whole like the interview universe, so that will come together.
You got it. I'd love to see it happen.
It's the 100th anniversary of the Lawrence train, 2029.
Is that right?
Yep. Well,
That's coming up.
When
Maybe
Georgia
we should wait till
painted-
2029, just so it's poetic, Mary. Cool. All right. Any questions about Kiowa-San Cristobal? I'll be sending out much more information about that April 18th trip to the state mailing list. But that'll be a fun trip to go on the ground and see what's going to happen. Last is Forest Fire level project updates. Muchos Vicente, you guys want to let us know what's going on in Miranda Canyon? Or sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Currently, we have 31 blocks, 131 acre blocks completed on the 71 acre area that we have there in Kathleen Canyon. We have 20 blocks that are assigned, and people are still working on them. It's getting in there, starting to get it done. We have 21 blocks that still need to be completed, but those are a little steeper hillsides. It's mostly Doug Burr, the last 21 acres. So we're looking for a lot of people that are willing to work hard to cut those trees down and get them out. The Tri-State cleaned their easement on the power lines. They did a great job. They gave us over 1,200 logs, actually. We had a couple of local sawmill owners that took a good amount of it and spread the rest of it, the logs from the piles, so people wouldn't be getting on the piles. So in looking at it, I think we got about 450 cords of wood out of there that they gave us, which was good. Although they did cut one of the areas that we were trying to save. It was a pretty pristine area, but they made a helicopter landing there, and some of the people were pretty pissed off, to say the least. But they did a good job. It's a heck of a good fire line that they made. It goes all the way from all the way to Angel Fire. So they did some helicopter logging, and it was great to see that. And what we're looking at now, it's very dry up there. There's a couple of patches of snow here and there, but it's very, very dry, tender dry. And what we'd like is for the Forest Service to put some kind of stage restriction on it, because there's a lot of people, especially some people that like to live off the grid, and go up there, and sometimes you find smolder and campfires, and that's the danger that we face now. So any restrictions that they can put in place would be welcome right now. And as far as the irrigation season on the Don Fernando, looks very bleak. We had no snowpack at all. the water that we are getting is very minimal, and I don't foresee it going past April, if it goes to the end of April. But we're working hard on it, and hopefully I want to finish that parcel this year, if we can, so we can get moving on to another parcel. But doing a lot of stuff. Moises has been up there almost every week to check it out. And we keep an eye on the place, and if there's anybody there, we take pictures of driver's license just in case. We don't go over there and try to tell them not to do things, because my understanding is some people have run into problems in the other projects.
Yep.
So we'll just get their license numbers and report them to the Forest Service and let the law enforcement take care of it. But overall, we're doing well. It's just the dryness that we're worried about.
Great. So that project in Capulin Canyon of Taos Canyon is one of several Forest Mayordomo projects happening in the Watershed Coalition boundaries. The other is up here north of Valdez. The Arroyo Hondo de Arriba Community Land Grant is operating. The other one is in Miranda Canyon. That's the La Serna Land Grant. That's operating that way. So those programs are local organizations like the land grants and the acequias take responsibility for like 30 to 50 acres. They issue blocks to the local woodcutters, and they can go cut them at their leisure. So thank you both for taking on that project.
If you know of anyone that wants an acre of wood, have them contact myself or Moises. We'll give you our phone numbers, and we'll take them up there. We'll give them a class on chainsaw training for a few hours, and we'll put them to work.
Thank you. Miguel or Harold at Taos Pueblo, if you guys can hear us and you're able to call in or speak up, do you want to give any updates on tribal lands work that you guys are doing or have planned?
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Harold Lefthand from Taos Pueblo. I'm Taos Pueblo's fields coordinator. I've been in my position for about a year now. I just want to give a brief update to the work that's been happening on the Pueblo Ridge project. It's approximately 340 acres of work that was planned back in 2023. We are awaiting approval from BIA to move forward with that project. Also talking with Forest Service on continuing that project along that same ridge line from that current point where that project is sitting all the way to the Flechado Pass area of Taos Pueblo, around the La Jara Canyon area. Currently talking with Forest Service about continuing that on. As for the Taos Pueblo side of things, we're looking at strengthening those areas that were done back in something about around 2007, 2010. The field breaks on Taos Pueblo. We're currently putting plans in place to retreat those areas, expand those areas. I also have one gap that's left up on that so the southern boundary of Taos Pueblo to tie into the top of the ridge to the old cat lines that were put in during the Encebado fire area. So Taos Pueblo is actively working towards securing that end of the Taos Pueblo. Long-term plans are to contain Taos Pueblo's land base. That includes our lands in Colfax County that we're working on right now, currently with Cimarron Watershed Association. We have 3 projects that are happening on that side, Wildland Urban Interface projects. And so we've been actively planning and working administratively on containing Taos Pueblo, like I said, and continuing to complement the work that's been happening within each of these areas.
Thanks, Harold. So I know that was tough to hear in the room, but this work on the National Forest following the Blue Lake Wilderness boundary is the work that Harold said they're working with BIA to resume. And then there's this side, these are private lands in Colfax County, just to the east of that blue line. That's property that's also owned by the Pueblo. And so they're working with the Cimarron Watershed Alliance to get work done, and other organizations to get work done in that area. The orange that I put up, that's all the tribal land, and that follows all the way up towards Wheeler Peak and up to the Carson National Forest. Great. I have a couple other private lands updates. The El Salto Land Association, which you all probably know, this is the 8,000 acre parcel. Two? It's only two? I always think it's 8 for some reason. It's a big triangle of land up there between Taos, Pueblo, and the Carson National Forest. Using that same green corridor funding, we did about 60 acres of thinning down here on these slopes. We continued some work that Mark and his crew had done back in the day and moved that up the hill further. And then we're currently cutting a road starting at the waterfall. Road's a big word, it's more like a trail. That gets us up to this ridge line that Mark knows well because you guys humped equipment up there a couple of years ago to get into some of these areas. That access path is large enough to run side-by-side up in a pinch, maybe a small pickup truck. That gets you up to that ridge line and gains access to that old skid trail, and that opens up a lot of areas for treatments in this area. You know, that property we identified as a keystone between the Pueblo and the wilderness on the National Forest a long time ago. So that fire access path really opens the door to expanding a lot of the work that's already started in there, getting a lot more bang for our buck in the future.
How is that related to that Laurel piece, the 144 acres or something?
That road itself and the work on the association is not directly related, but what she's referring to is the Taos Land Trust recently acquired like 140 acres that was previously owned by Tom Worrell. And I know I've had a meeting with Darian with the Land Trust. I think Grace may have had a meeting with Darian as well, and maybe even State Forestry. Darian and the Land Trust are really gung-ho about getting some thinning work done on that parcel as well. I don't know, Ben, if they've talked to you guys in the Corps about what that could look like. Do you guys want to give an update? So there's the El Salto Land Association, that's the former land grant, and then to the west of that is 140 acres of this kind of jigsaw puzzle of parcels that Taos Land Trust recently acquired outright. And so
I think it was the El Salto Land grant that we just approved funding for the wetland.
That's right. That's right. No, the other one we haven't done anything on yet. Do you guys know what Darian's plans are right now?
We just had initial conversations. He's very interested.
Yep. Yep. So if Taos Canyon is wildfire enemy number one, the El Salto area is arguably number two. And so to have the association getting work done, the land grant in this area, and now to have the land trust as a landowner that's actively trying to do work up in that neighborhood, it's a huge win. And Jeanette, since you're in the room, I think it's worth pointing out that some of that property, at least from the satellite, I haven't walked it, looks like you could do some redundant exits, some like ingress egress. I know it gets complicated in the neighborhood fast, but the fact that that's such a tinderbox and it's one way in, one way out on a super narrow road, it feels obvious, or at least worth a try to revisit that conversation and to talk to Darian about it. I don't know if you have already or not.
Not yet, but we'd love to, because all of those little roads coming up there are dead ends, and some of them are back. And so if there is a fire event in this area, you have the potential of a lot of people trapped. And that's part of our risk factor in that area. That's part of why, with Chris's help way back when, we did start a Firewise group, and we did have those conversations and walked around there to see if there was opportunity for some of the private landowner to say, yeah, an emergency, please, like, use this as an egress. Didn't go very far, like you indicated, JR, but maybe now with this property, under Taos Land Trust, perhaps we can have a safety factor in the neighborhood. It gets scary. It gets really scary.
Yeah.
So whatever we can do, whatever conversations that I can be helpful with, but I'll definitely talk with Darian.
Great.
Chair, is that the health interest plan that you said?
Yeah, I was trying to find the association. Audrey, give me 1 sec. So that's the 2,000 acre El Salto del Agua Land Association. That's the former land grant that goes up towards Vaicitos Peak. And then this is the 141 acres. Like I said, it's a jigsaw puzzle of parcels that Tom Worrell owns and has since sold to the land trust. And so the Quintanas, and I think one other landowner, have this little sliver between the two of them. It'd be nice to connect it all. But that's kind of what you're looking at. And so yeah, to your point, and Jeanette, that road kind of gets you to here. And if you can find a way to just get across those 1 or 2 parcels, at least you have another option in terms of getting in or getting out of there. It's pretty nasty. All right. I have to send an invitation. You out of here, Chris? No, go ahead.
I'd always help you think about it at the same time as the people are trying to get out, the fire trucks are trying to get in.
Yeah, that's right.
You gotta have a circle drive. That's some kind of plan.
And they're gonna do, our first responders are gonna do everything they can, right? But if it's not safe,
Yeah,
it's not safe for them either.
just get up that road and everybody's nose to nose. I imagine that's happened before on us, different situations.
Well, and you just get fire apparatus that bogs up the lane. Fire apparatus. You get one truck in a 1 lane driveway, and that's it.
Most of those roads are 1 lane. Most of those roads, you can't have 2 cars.
Yeah, it's Winnie the Pooh, he's stuck. Yeah.
Oh, God. All right.
Mark, are you doing? Jared talks about a road with a trail being punched in. Is that you?
Are we doing what now?
Is that you making this road?
No.
Really?
It's still the.
Mike's still just doing the road.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Got equipment in there. That's great.
Yeah. It looks great. It actually,
That's even plausible. Amazing.
Dude, you trust me. It's taken 3 years.
It's so steep. And you know, while you're talking about equipment in the woods, and Mary mentioned that fire that she had in McGaffey recently.
That's right.
That was equipment generated?
Oh, we don't know for sure.
Yeah.
You know, the equipment was working in the area where the fire started the day before. But we did not have an investigator go out.
Regardless, steel bumping rocks create sparks. It's pretty unavoidable, so.
It wasn't very rocky. We were concerned that it might not have been rocky.
Well, it's just, we worked under these conditions on West Moreno a long time ago, Flying Horse Ranch, and it came down to be mandatory to grid out the area at the end, like walk out the working units. Again, I know I'm saying yeah.
So right now, it's really, really important to keep a heads up and be aware. I know this is kind of counter to the Forest Service letting you plug everything down, but I think this is a good time for people to go to the woods and keep their eyes open.
Well, twice in that setting, just with chainsaws, we caught smoldering, getting ready to burn embers just from saws in Duffy wood, you know, and heavy equipment. The doghead fire, I'm sure the fire people in the room heard the doghead fire, which was tragic down in Manzano's, right? The Manzano Mountains. That was equipment for sure, right? So you talked about Forest Fitness suppressed their own fire, right?
Yeah, the that they pretty much had outlets when they got there.
So they have a water tender on site or a water buffalo?
Well, they had a dozer on site.
Then,
A dozer on site. They had a water buffalo.
oh, so they surrounded it. Oh, okay.
But I think the take-home message is, lots of these can start fires. We've had, like the track fire over on the outside of the mountain was started by the ATV driving on mountain. So this is why the Forest Service likes to close this down, is because when you take choice to the build that start fires, but generally I've never done anyone in a pair of shoes starting fires. So out there with your eyes open, let us know if you see something or smell something. And usually smell before you see something.
See something, say something. So no, Mark is not building a road in El Salto, but the county is hiring him to do about 60 acres.
26 for the.
26
for
acres.
Mandarin?
Yeah, which is located just west of the Deer Mesa subdivision. We've got a chunk right there that we blocked, and hopefully you'll get started on that here in the next couple of weeks.
We're looking for a contractor in the east.
Me too.
Who shows up? We're ready.
Great.
And we're gonna windrow the slash and masticate it and integrate it.
Yeah, that's right.
So, well,
Integrated. You're using your own word already. Cool. All right.
Sorry, on tape.
I want to move on to our guest, Victor Lucero. Victor, do you mind unmuting yourself and introducing yourself, please?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Victor Lucero. I'm the Forest Health Program Manager with the New Mexico Forestry Division. I'm officed out of Santa Fe, but I do have statewide responsibilities, and glad to be on the call with you all today.
So happy to have you, Victor. I'm very content to let you take it away. I'm going to do a very quick introduction by way of saying what prompted me to invite you to be part of the meeting is that while everyone's looking at the scorched trees near my house on the east side of the highway in San Cristobal, I keep watching all the blinking out pinon on the west side of the highway from the Ips beetle that are kind of moving through that area. And I know you've been up there poking around with Peggy, who I share an office with, and I just wanted you to sort of speak to Ips in general and then what you're seeing in our area and what the causes and the effects of that might be.
Perfect. Yeah, so went out and did some ground surveys with Peggy and also with Grace from the Soil and Water Conservation District there in Taos. And primarily we're looking at some of the PJ stands where there is a concern for pinyon nips in the area San Cristobal towards Cuesta and back towards Arroyo Hondo, I believe. Yeah. And so a couple months ago, went in there and hacked into some trees to dissect the bark and did find some active brood, meaning there are live beetles in some of these trees. However, looking at and doing like rudimentary stand count of infested trees per unit of about 1/20th of an acre or so every so often. Currently, things look okay. However, the caveat is that things have turned extremely hot and dry. Didn't have a winter. Everybody's aware of that. And this insect, pinyon nips specifically, we'll talk about it. It is an endemic insect. It has been in PJ ecosystems since the inception of such. And they capitalize on stressed trees. So there's always beetles out in the landscape. They can maintain endemic populations on an individual tree or on an individual branch of a tree. However, once we start seeing landscape size outbreaks like we've seen further south in like the Daddle, Magdalena, Sacramento Mountains in southern New Mexico, where there's thousands of acres impacted by this particular insect, it's typically predisposed to respond to to drought conditions. So we have drought stressed trees. The trees don't have a sustained sap flow, which is the tree's natural defense against bark beetles as they initiate attack. And so that's when we start seeing large areas impacted. However, in your neck of the woods, again, based on my observations, along with Peggy and with Grace, we did again see some activity in the woodlands, but did not see anything that would initially indicate that there is an outbreak. Oh, good. So yeah, glad you pulled that up. So we see the large image you see in the middle of the bole of the tree where that reddish brown pitch tube is right there. That is one of the telltale signs that Pinyon Nips has successfully attacked a host tree. And oftentimes, secondarily, you'll see reddish or rust-colored boring dust in the branch crotch or in bark fissures or at the base of the tree. So that's an indicative sign that bark beetles are active. You have another picture there where there's a faded individual tree that I'm looking at. And so that is usually, what gets everybody's attention first. If you spend enough time poking around in the woods, you'll be able to determine what is actually going on prior to this event. And once a tree obviously has faded from green to straw to this brownish red color, the tree is obviously succumbed to the effects of bark beetle attack. So these insects, they are phloem feeders. So they're feeding within that cambium layer, just that real narrow few cell layer underneath the bark of the tree. And as a result of the beetles feeding on that phloem layer, perfect, beautiful, these insects will ultimately girdle the tree, the same as if it would be girdled with a mechanical device, a hatchet or a chainsaw. And ultimately that leads to the mortality of the tree once the tree is girdled. And no longer has any viable phloem. The insects, completed their life cycle underneath that bark, will emerge and start seeking new hosts. So the time frame from the initial attack to the subsequent generation can be less than a month, especially when we're experiencing warm temperatures. So this insect being multi-volting or it has multiple generations per season. We've seen as many as 5 generations in the southern reaches of the state. In the Taos area, you're probably looking at 2 to 3 generations. And that is triggered, the insect's activity is triggered by a temperature regime. And that temperature regime, when insects become active this time of the year and the spring of the year, is 55 degrees Fahrenheit. If you're into, the other, if you're into Celsius, that would be 13 degrees Celsius. So, and what that means is that we've had those temperatures hovering now for some time. So the mean daily temperature of 55 degrees Fahrenheit, these insects will emerge from overwintering trees. The trees that we looked at a couple months in your area were overwintering trees where the bark beetles, they kind of migrate to the base of the tree closer to the soil and peeling back that bark. The majority of the insects that we saw were mature Ips bark beetle. So no doubt that there is a beginning of bark beetle activity in your area. So going back to the initiation of that activity, these beetles will start flying. They're pretty good flyers. They could fly, the literature says 1 to 2 miles from their overwintering sites. So they could easily, cover quite a bit of landscape in a short period of time, given that there's multiple trees throughout a landscape that have overwintering beetles. And then once the insects become active now in the spring, they're starting to seek out those decadent trees, those trees that are suitable for attack. Bark beetles in general typically prefer stressed trees. That stress can come from, as we're in the middle of this hot, warm, dry season, they're stressed by drought. Could be, in the perimeter of a fire. So fire stressed trees definitely attract bark beetles. I've seen, construction sites or areas where there's a new road cut in. Those trees, the soil compaction also leads to stressors that will allow the tree to exhibit that stress in the form of emitting volatiles, and those volatiles attract bark beetles. So in a nutshell, we have an insect that is perfectly suited to survive in the best of conditions, and in the worst of conditions reach outbreak numbers or epidemic numbers where multiple trees in a given unit within the landscape now have hundreds if not thousands of bark beetles per tree. They consume the phloem and they're hungry, and then their next job is to reproduce, so they're finding the next suitable hosts. One of the things that concerns me, wherever there's dense stands of opinion in PJ landscapes and woodlands, is the fact that these bark beetles can cause significant mortality, thus leading to fuels. And especially in WUI areas, wildland urban interface areas, that fuel load definitely changes the concern for fires. I'm going to pause now, and if anybody has any comments, or JR, if you want to direct me to a different tone, just let me know.
You're doing great, Victor, but I'll pause and see if anybody's got any questions to start with.
Yeah. The same kind of issue on 518 itself, like concrete, you see all those dead trees.
That's a different critter. Yep. So the bug that's eating all the leaves off the mostly white bird going up towards the top of USL is tussock moth.
Yeah. So
So it's a different critter.
Yeah, different animal.
But there's IPS species that are particular to particular species of trees. Is that right, Victor? So we're talking about the IPS that's specific to the pinon in this case.
Yes, correct. So IPS confusus attacks primarily pinyon pine. However, we do find it in ponderosa when that interface does occur. So and there's very subtle anatomical features on these beetles that you got to look at it under a microscope and count the number of spines on the rear end of the bark beetle. But what we see in PJ is 99% of the time is IPS confusus. Somebody again, the comment about the defoliation activity up on 518 southeast of Taos. Yeah, that's a defoliating caterpillar. The good news about that event is that by all sampling measures that I've done on some private as well as on federal lands, is that population of Douglas fir tussock moth has collapsed. So they're not there anymore. Actually, they're there. They're just not in the outbreak numbers that we saw the last couple of years.
Thanks for that update. Will, you got your hand up. Thanks for joining us, by the way. I thought bugs and trees might get your attention.
Thanks. So, hi, Victor. My name is Will. I'm the county agricultural agent, so I get a lot of tree calls. If you just want to discuss real quick, I've seen a lot of beetle kill through the years of in New Mexico, and a lot of the calls that I get at the office are about like high value trees and people's landscaping.
Right.
So just if you could speak a little bit about what some of those options are for systemic insecticides, and if that is really a good option.
Right. So, managing, pinyon nips in a confined area, in a, residential site, There are options to use chemical controls. They're they vary on efficacy. For example, speaking to some folks that choose to use kind of like a more soft insecticide, if you will, like a dormant oil, that's not going to impact this insect at all. So what one needs to consider is definitely identify your high value trees, and determine first and foremost if they're not infested. Once the bark beetle burrows underneath the outer bark and gets into that cambium layer, the systemics don't work. Contact insecticides don't work. So you need to make sure to look at those signs of pitch tubes, boring dust. Take a look at the canopy if it's kind of a little funky, and make that determination. Once it's determined, however, that the tree is viable, I would strongly advocate for cultural practices, including coarse arborist wood chips, if the duff layer is not sufficient in that setting, and supplemental irrigation if that resource is available, and then secondarily move to a preventative insecticide application of insecticides that contain the active ingredients permethrin, bifenthrin, or carbaryl. And there's a whole bunch of different brand names out there. And the trick to that preventative approach, however, is how well the applicator performs that activity. You've got to focus on the main bole of the tree, and then treat the larger stems up to about 1.5 inches in diameter, because IPS will attack those branches at that size. Now, there has been some question about tree injections for controlling pinyon nips, wherever I go, because it seems the technology is viable. However, in drought stressed conditions, when there's very little soil moisture, where the sap is just very slow in moving, there is concern that the movement of the systemic insecticide does not reach throughout the vascular tissue in a timely manner to control IPS in any tree species. There are some insecticides that are labeled for trunk drenches or soil drenches around the trunk. But again, it goes back to what is the condition of the tree with respect to hydration at the root zone, especially at the zone where the fine roots would uptake that insecticide application.
Thanks, Victor. Thanks for the question, Will. IPS has been for sure a concern for the last several years with as dry and as warm as it's been in a lot of the project areas we're working in. I know at least on the private land work that I've been involved in, we've taken what precautions we can to reduce the spread of the beetle from one place to the next. Do you have suggestions or recommendations? I know this is something Grace and I talked about a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
What if anything can the project work either at scale or on just somebody's 1 acre do to minimize the spread or the impact?
Yeah, really good question. So it goes back to the insect activity and its biology and the temperature regime. So I completely understand that we got to get work done, but that window of time typically to get to confine the spread of bark beetle is during the cold months, which typically have been November through March, but we're seeing those temperatures, that temperature regime, squeeze that threshold on either side. So we're, warmer fall, warmer early winter, and definitely warmer spring. So I would pay attention to that 55-degree threshold. That if possible. Secondarily, slash management is real important for IPS species in general. So if you can reduce the size of slash so that when it's out, scattered, and smaller slash dries faster, thus reducing the potential for ips to build in that slash material. And then, consider when possible, if removal in high value, more urbanized areas, if there's that is people do that here in Santa Fe all the time on the east side. However, it's expensive, but we do have a green waste facility that accepts slash material on a regular basis, and it's about a mile from some contiguous pinion stands. So that's the caveat. You've got to move material about a mile away from the nearest pinion pine. Otherwise, you would have the potential to have any infested slash emerge and then start flying around looking for suitable hosts. And obviously, if timely burning of piles, that's a good means of managing slash when the conditions are right. And I don't know when that is anymore, especially so darn dry.
You got that right. There's one more kind of curveball I want to throw you. So the pictures that I've been showing on the call and to the room are from a couple of days ago. I went out and dissected one of these trees.
Right.
And while I was dissecting, also found this.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
And so I want to reiterate something. This Ips beetle is not an alien. Like you said earlier in the call, this is part and has always been part of the ecosystem, sort of ebbs and flows in its population. And it does, in a way, serve a role, an ecosystem role. And this ugly critter, ugly is my word, not yours, is not the same thing. But talk a little bit about how one might lead to the next and how this sort of starts a new process as these trees die. Like, what is happening when we see something like this?
Sure.
So
what is right. So the ecology of what this insect does is very important. There's the natural reduction of stress trees when we have bark beetle attack. This particular animal on your knife point is a round-headed borer larva, probably a pine sawyer. Everybody knows these longhorn beetles that you'll find in your wood piles. The larval stage of these actually, enters into from the outer bark, feeds on whatever little cambia might be left, and then they penetrate into the heartwood, deeper into the wood, where they spend, up to a couple of years, depending on the species. And these animals actually are important in nutrient recycling. And, so not all is lost whenever we have, a mortality event. We've got to rebuild soils, get carbon back into the soil. Any of the nutrients that that tree provides will, over the process of decomposition and time, adds to, a balanced soil ecology, and as well as, food sources for wildlife. Woodpeckers are frequently seen in these areas. So the ecology that is generated after, during and after a bark beetle kill is important, because again, there's got to be that, nutrient recycling that occurs whenever we see these secondary wood boring pests occur. And, these do not, one of the questions that comes up is, well, will these, wood boring insects, invade live trees? And the answer is typically not. And I wish I could say definitely not, but there's been occurrences where stressed trees will be so decadent that longhorn borers can attack those stressed trees. But typically, these animals follow a mortality event. And I've been fortunate enough to see that the benefits of the punky wood actually is good to build soil, and it decomposes faster and gets back into the nutrient cycle.
Thanks. That was a beautiful answer. The last thing, there was one photo that I just downloaded to reiterate a point that you just made, Victor. This one here. So
Oh, yeah.
So tell us, when you mentioned the ecology, so you've got stressed trees, the hips, people will come in, often kill that tree. Then you've got the wood borer beetles that'll come in next, and they start that process of decomposition. And then talking about the ecology, what are we looking at in this photograph?
So you're looking at, again, more than likely a Ips killed tree. Secondary longhorn beetle adults will come, and it's a really cool process. The females, they'll chew with their mandibles a little niche on the bark, and then they'll turn around and deposit an egg in that little niche. The egg hatches into that, a very tiny larva that eventually grows to be about an inch and a half long. But so you see it going, these insects going into these trees, doing what they're doing, feeding. But then again, they provide a valuable food source for. And I'm not a bird person, but I do know that there's a substantial amount of beneficial forage for our woodpecker species, rodents, and even larger mammals that will tear apart some of these insect-infested trees for their calories.
Thanks, Victor. I think I'm losing the crowd on all the science nerd stuff, but Will, I'm going to let you chime in about woodpeckers before we move on.
Okay.
I think Victor already got it. It's part of the natural cycle. I'll take this opportunity to ask one last question. Sorry to everyone about the science stuff. Victor, did I see earlier in the response to the Calf Canyon fire stuff on the Vegas side of the mountains, doing pheromone traps or pheromone lures on any of these?
So we've done pheromone repellents on stands of Douglas fir. So there's a bark beetle that's associated with Douglas fir called, the common name is Douglas fir beetle, Douglas fir bark beetle. And for many years, there's been very good results using a repellent. The repellent comes in, hold on a second, let me see if I could get this. Comes in like these little packets right there, and so they're charged with a pheromone that's been synthesized, and this pheromone speaks to the bark beetles, and in essence it's a chemical conversation with the bark beetles that tells the bark beetles that this tree has already been attacked and it has no longer any viable phloem for the next wave of bark beetles. So it's basically tricking the endemic populations around a Douglas fir stand to fly and move elsewhere. And during that process of flying and looking for other trees, they're subject to, mortality events, predation, things of that nature. Some folks have deployed a product called verbenone, which is another bark beetle repellent. And we don't have very good data sets on that. Anecdotally, some folks swear by it. We're actually doing a study down in the Daddles in Pinyon Woodlands on the efficacy of verbenone to repel Ips confusus in pinyon pine, and looking forward to working on that project, and would love to update this group when we have any strong data to compare treated areas versus non-treated areas.
Wonderful. Victor, thank you so much for calling in. Always a pleasure. I'm always getting excited, obviously, anytime I get to talk about bugs. So really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And please, willing and able and available to meet with anybody on the call. Love to get out in the woods, and we could do some field days and see exactly what's going on. I am committed to work with my colleagues there in the Cimarron district, which covers Taos, to make sure that we keep eyes on, some of those sensitive areas, especially in treated areas, because I'm intrigued that when we see treated or thinned areas, we see less activity of these bark beetles because the trees have more resources available to them. They're not competing with one another or with other species for, valuable soil moisture. So, yeah, keep me posted on anything you see, and I'll do likewise.
Great. Thanks again, Victor.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. Have a good one. Thank you for inviting, JR. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming.
Take care. Bye.
Great. Well, then the only housekeeping we've got to do in the next 7 minutes, and it'll probably only take 2, is remind everyone about that field trip in San Cristobal on April 18th. I know it's a Saturday, but I'm feeding you lunch. So if you're interested in things like bugs or trees or pinon and juniper, prescribed fire or thinning or angry neighbor conversations, please come check that one out. It's actually going to be great. I'm really looking forward to it. Sorry?
No meeting place?
We're going to meet at the San Cristobal Community Center at noon. We'll have lunch, and then we'll head up from there. I've got Del Fuego March 7th event recap on here. I'm going to skip that and just say, for those of you who went, thanks. That was a project that I helped to put together, really looking at kind of big picture, what are the changes that we're seeing. I took a group to 4 different burn sites in Taos County last fall, and then on March 7th, we sort of told the story of that. I have a recording of the entire thing that I haven't gotten to yet, but once I do, I'm just going to post that to YouTube, so it's available to anybody who wants to see it. So again, thanks for that. And then lastly, that segues into a project that I'm working with the Paseo project on that's coming up this fall. It's called Disturbance. And the idea is, in a couple of weeks, we've invited 6 preeminent fire ecologists and forest ecologists to come to Taos and to spend 4 days with a group of 11 artists that we picked through a jury selection process. We're going to do similar visits to burned areas, prescribed burned areas, managed fire areas, wildfire areas, all different ecosystems, all different fire effects, to kind of dive into the complexity of fire and what role it has played on the landscape, how that role is changing, and then what people might do about it. The reason I wanted to mention it to this group is those same artists and scientists will be part of a barrage of public programming that's going to start in August and continue all the way through January. And I want to invite anybody who's got an idea that might even be loosely or tangentially related to this theme to please come see me and let's brainstorm ideas on how you or your organization or your group can be part of this idea. The goal is to reach as many people across the county in as many places across the county as we possibly can. And that is only possible if there's organizations, neighborhood associations, groups, acequias, whatever, in all those little villages and nooks and crannies of the county who want to be part of this project and program. I'm really excited about it. We talk a lot about needing to educate or touch people or communicate the stuff that's going on. And this approach, the Del Fuego thing and now Disturbance, is a really out of the box, less lecturing at you about what you should do and more let's talk about the challenges we're facing. I found it really enriching to do that project, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I really want to work with all you guys on what that looks like. So please come see me. Whatever it is you do, let's figure out how to get you looped in on that. Any other questions or comments before I call it quits today? Vicente.
I have one comment, just for the bug in county commissioners' ears. If you look to the east and you see those foothills along Cañon, Weimer Road, and all those areas, it's so thick and pinon in there. We're prioritizing the upper watershed, but we're not doing anything about the lower watershed. If you look at those hillsides, you can't see any brown on some of them. All it's green, nothing but trees, thick trees. So the wildland manager here should look at those areas, those private land areas, and kind of go look at those really, because if a fire's going to start, our population is here, hikers, up in the Vinatilla and all those places, that's where the fires are gonna start. We're concentrating way up there, but not concentrating down here, and it's thick. If a fire starts here, it'll go over the ridge into Rio Chiquito, over that ridge into Pot Creek. We'll destroy 3 watersheds, maybe more, and we're not looking at that. All we're looking at is one watershed, but we're not looking at the big picture. So if we can look at all this area in here, all these areas in here are so thick that if the fire starts here, it'll affect all those 180,000, how many, 180,000 acres? 80,000 acres all around, not just ours, but yours.
Well, concurrent to what you're talking about, Vicente, the Weimer itself has become a buoy. You know, it's growing up in there so thick, and there's 4-foot sage mixed in with piñons that are come down in there. So, and this, you know, what you've done here is taken us back to our roots, because that's when in the beginning, when this all started, we drew a map around the watershed area. Basically, if a drop of water falls in this whole region, if it falls into the valley, that's how we defined the boundaries of the watershed coalition in the beginning, and then it got expanded to San Cristobal because of Kiowa-San Cristobal work that was going on, right? Yeah. So it's awesome that you brought that up, and I've got one more just like that that Jillian Joyce brought up recently. We were talking about funding and getting work done, and she talked about the New Mexico River Stewardship Program with NMED, and apparently she says they have so much money they're going to have a hard time putting it on the ground. And to my mind, you know, we've always looked at Taos Canyon. It's been and you just reminded us again, it's the highest priority watershed, really. They're all important, but very dangerous area, 400 homes. That the drainage itself, you know, all those decking cottonwoods and scrub and all that. So maybe we can have some conversations going forward. We've got some new interest about using New Mexico River stewardship money on the riparian, private land, the riparian zone in through the drainage, because it's the same as what you bring up, Vicente. It's likely ignition area, right?
And you said that that's a good idea for the soil and water conservation district to hopefully tie in between the county and the Forest Service, and we're actually looking at funding whole neighborhoods at once now, not just individual landowners. So I'm happy to send you that information.
It's great. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, no, points very well taken. A couple of thoughts as we wrap up. One is, you sent it to your plea, which you've been making very diligently for years. The good news is it's inside of that green line, so at least now the door is open to accomplish work in there. The bad news is, and you can talk to Gary about this after the meeting, just because that NEPA's done doesn't mean the work happens next year. Sometimes you got to come to meetings for 4 or 5 years before it starts happening up the road from you. But yeah, all points well taken. The other thing I'd mention is the county intends to update the Community Wildfire Protection Plan this year. It's been about 5 years since we did it last. So we're submitting a grant proposal. Kind of whether or not that gets funded, I feel like we're obliged to update that document. And Mark, you reminded me, it's been 11 years now since the original Taos Valley Watershed Coalition landscape restoration strategy was developed. It's probably due for a dust off and an update as well. So I'll give that some thought, and maybe at the meeting we have in 3 months, that's something we talk about in earnest. About what it looks like. Thank you for coming, Darlene.
The LRS you're talking about.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I ran across. I did some reading in there, and I was
It could be improved.
It could be. Times have changed so much in 10 years.
Conditions have changed.
Conditions have changed. Yeah.
Thank you guys all for coming. Really appreciate it. I'll see you in 3 months, if not sooner.
See you on the 18th. Hey, you were trying to just one second. You were trying to tell me something about, or no, who was it? Ellen. No, you're Ellen. There she goes. Yeah. You were trying to tell me something about back in the good old days.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, we're trying to figure it out.